Welcome to War Cradle Studios. I'm Lee and with me is Stuart.
Hello.
And today we're giving you a sneak peek of a new outlaw posse, the Wayward Eight. I say new, but the Wayward Eight are fan favourites.
They are. They've been around for a while. They were in the first edition of the game, but we've, like everything else in Wild West Exodus and the dystopian age in general, we've dialed it up to 11 and kind of reworked the characters, looked at them again to see how they are represented, not just as miniatures, but in terms of the narrative, the background for those characters, and come up with something that fits into the new world that we all face.
So a brief overview of the Wayward Eight. They're led by Marcus Wayward,
yes,
a former Confederate soldier who has been injured but still lives that daring life of adventure. Does he see it as a life of adventure, or is that just how he what his skills are?
Marcus Wayward is one of these people who he's painfully aware of the kind of the heightened world that he lives in. It is a world of treasure hunting and adventure and excitement, and all the stakes are much higher, but also the successes and things are much sweeter as well. So he's truly embraced that kind of swashbuckling hero kind of role in the world, and it's a stark contrast to how he would have been during the Civil War as a Confederate officer. But he's used the end of the Civil War. He saw terrible things done by both sides. He's put that to one side. He still believes in some of the things that the Confederacy stood for, but he's made peace with the idea that the war's over. And though the Civil War has given birth to a much more militarized and a much more domineering union, which is something that he didn't want, that is the world that he now lives in. But he's discovered that out on the fringes, out in the American, in the frontier, in the West, there's all sorts of spaces where he can find adventure and
still have that
earn a living. Yeah.
Some semblance of freedom that he imagined that he was
Yes.
going to keep had the Confederacy won the war.
Yes.
Cool. So the Wayward Eight, unlike a lot of outlaw posses, they're quite a close-knit familial band, aren't they? Yeah.
Whether that's that Marcus is trying to form them like a tight military team, or whether it's that they're being used more as that kind of family feel that they've built up over the time, who knows? But you're right, they are much more close knit. It's not as common to see the individual members of the Wayward Eight going off to do their own thing, and featuring in other posses and with other factions. They're more largely self-contained, and they operate as a unit of 8.
But it is very much Marcus who's in charge.
Absolutely, he's a boss's boss. He's very much the centre of things. He wouldn't have it any other way. He's not the most easygoing because he is front and centre of things. He has got a bit of an ego to him, but he does care for the people that are part of his posse. He does care for their well-being. And whereas in stark contrast to somebody like Earl Shepherd from the Deadly Seven, who doesn't care about their past, Earl Shepherd only cares about what you bring to the posse today. Marcus is very different. He's much more about, well, you're part of the crew, part of the posse, but that includes all your baggage. That includes because they become a distraction, or they can affect. There could be jeopardy that
they're
you place.
They're together for a job.
Yeah.
Whereas the Wayward Eight are together because they want to be together, more or less.
Yes. But he's shrewd because he understands that people's backstories, people's history, that can bring threats to it. And if you're part of the same posse, that threat could in fact endanger everybody. So he very much is about, I need to be able to trust you, I need to know all about you because we're all in this together.
Yeah, it's a kind of do it my way or get out of my way sort of philosophy.
Yeah, if you break his trust, you've got to go.
Cool. So Marcus's main man, his second in command, is Hicks Kincade.
That's right, yeah. So Hicks and Marcus served together during the Civil War. Hicks is after a quiet life. He's not that keen on necessarily all the dashing adventure and things that the Wayward Eight get into. However, he's acquired two things. So not only has he acquired a lot of the sort of the burden. Hicks is quite a caring individual, and he as Marcus doesn't take particularly good care of himself, Hicks feels like he needs to make sure that his former captain is okay, he's all right. So there's that responsibility that Hicks feels. I mean, Hicks is a great looking character.
So does that come off though? Is that's also a bit of a burden for Hicks because that's actually preventing him from going off and living the life that he wants?
It is, but the other problem, the complication is, and we now bring us to Zarelda Kincade. So Zarelda was rescued by the Wayward Eight and has sworn that she will now, she effectively owes them, and she takes that very seriously. So she feels indebted in many ways to the Wayward Eight as her new family, for want of a better word. Because of that, so Zarelda is an incredibly powerful woman and has chosen Hicks as her husband. Hicks is quite open to that idea.
Bit of an odd couple, though, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And
he's the quiet tinkerer, and she's the bellowing, almost like a warrior woman, first in the fray with a pistol in one hand and a knife in the other.
Yeah, she is, and what that now means is, so Hicks, not only does Hicks feel obligated to look after Marcus, and he's got that tie from the Civil War, but he's obviously now has a wife, and his wife, so Zarelda, is very keen to remain as part of the Wayward Eight and embrace that whole spirit of adventure and what they stand for. So Hicks doesn't have a lot of choice. He's in for the ride. When we look at Zarelda, so Zarelda is not necessarily the kind of woman that Hicks thought that he would end up married to. I think he would like her to wear some more clothes, maybe wear more traditional
he's not asked
attire for the period.
He's not asked her to bring his meals at a certain time, has he?
Well, no, he's still able.
A black eye situation by the looks of it.
Yeah, I mean, from Zarelda's point of view, she'll wear what she wants. She'll dress how she wants. She'll behave how she wants because that's who she is. That's part of her character. So Hicks has got two choices. He either accepts her for who she is, or they part ways. But no, they do get on well together. Zarelda herself is very strong. She enjoys being outdoors and sort of embracing this spirit of adventure that the Wayward Eight get themselves into. You're right, she's first into the fray kind of thing. Very happy, very capable with the blade as well as a rifle or pistol. She's a fantastic right hand to Marcus in that regard. So while Hicks technically is in charge, he's like second in command because of the leadership role that he would have taken alongside Marcus during the Civil War, it's Zarelda who Marcus,
the more decisive.
Yeah, Zarelda who Marcus turns to in the heat of things to take charge and to lead the Wayward Eight into or out of trouble.
So next we've got Kimberly Free.
Yes. Yeah, so she's a
bit of a wrench monkey.
Yeah, so while you mentioned that Hicks likes to tinker, Hicks does. He likes gadgets and bits and pieces, but he's a rank amateur compared to K3. K is a prodigy when it comes to machinery and technology. Perhaps the Covenant of the Enlightened might have made good use of her. As it was, though, she ended up with the Union.
Use of her mind. When you say the Covenant may have made good use of her in the United States, that's maybe got a double meaning.
yeah, perhaps. No. She was brought into the Union, so right towards literally the last few days of the Civil War, she was sort of earmarked as somebody that might be able to be part of Tesla's new pipeworks, which is his new factory complex that he's building up. She spent some time with the Union and did study there for a time, but realised that the military life wasn't quite for her. She's not a particularly hard person, and nor does she like the relentless discipline that came with service to the Union. And she could see the kind of attitude that the Union has to the rest of America, and also its ambitions and its plans for the rest of the dystopian world. That wasn't for her. So she did her contracted minimum time, and then she left as quickly as she could, and eventually made her way into the Wayward Eight, where Marcus very immediately identified that her skills were appropriate for things that he would need, and he could see she was lost and she needed a family, she needed help. So the Wayward Eight have become that for her.
So while K3 is not necessarily the most combat-oriented member of the Wayward Eight, Jake Mattia certainly is.
Yeah, Jake definitely makes up for that. Jake also served during the Civil War. He wasn't always part of Marcus's unit during the war, but he, for several times, he did serve alongside him. Jake adores blowing things up and destroying things and shooting things and smashing things.
He's certainly geared up for that sort of thing. He looks like he's wearing a Terminator rig.
Yeah, it's a Confederate Terminator suit that he's got. It would have been his at one point, or it would have been acquired by him.
He just forgot to take it off before he left the fort.
But there was decommissioning, so it should have all been probably on the same smelting pile as
Faraday.
As Faraday would have been on. But yeah, but he didn't return it, and in fact he just walked off the base one day with all of his gear and looked for a fight. He isn't quite so at peace with the end of the Civil War. He actually enjoyed the fight. He dislikes the idea of anybody telling him what to do. He only tolerates the way that Marcus runs the Wayward Eight because there are things that Marcus knows about Jake during the Civil War that if Marcus was so minded, he could reveal. He doesn't have to, but occasionally he'll drop the odd word in here and there, and Jake stops grumbling and goes along with whatever adventure is on the cards. Jake is the firepower of the Wayward Eight. He brings the heavy guns.
Two very heavy looking guns.
And enjoys it thoroughly. I mean, that's the thing. Even when they're mounted up, he will then use an iron horse as heavily armed as possible, because why not? They're just being on a mount means you just have more guns.
Our next member, she's quite the unconventional type, isn't she? Who's this?
Oh, do you mean Sierra Icarus?
Yes.
Yeah, so Sierra is, whereas the rest of them are either mechanics or fighters in the posse, Sierra is that rare thing. She's more of a diplomat. There are unkind names for what she alludes to be as a profession. Technically, though, she isn't. She doesn't work in the brothels and things of the West. It's all a cover. She's an operative. She's an agent. But Sierra's been so good at her job, and also.
But that begs the question: operative for who?
Yeah. Well, she's so good at her job that she's able to be useful to several of the world governments, and because of that, they've never pressed it. They all work on the assumption that she's actually an agent for them. Whether or not she is, it hasn't been specified. Certainly she's taken the oath of allegiance to several global powers, and she manages to traffic information to and from. Really, the side she's on is her own, but she has enough information and she has enough guile and diplomacy about her that she can skillfully walk through these different circles, and she's able to bring the Wayward Eight, the jobs and the contacts, and smooth things over in circles that otherwise they wouldn't have had a hope to be involved in. So she's phenomenally useful to the Wayward Eight. She might be a little in love with Marcus Wayward, but she's also pretty shrewd. She's not going to let something like that turn her head. But certainly she has a soft spot for him for certain, and quite often finds herself in the company of them. And they're quite a likeable group, and she finds that she can be herself amongst them rather than these various guises that she has to take on when she's in these other circles. So more often than not, Sierra finds herself amongst them. Militarily and kind of physically, she's not the most impressive or intimidating, but she can fire a pistol, and she has access, as I say, to this information network and these contacts that make the Wayward Eight have access to these lucrative contracts and jobs.
Okay, so the final two members of the Wayward Eight we're going to look at are the most recent members to join the lineup, and that is Flowing River and her brother Son Totem.
Yes, so when they first arrived at the Wayward Eight, they appeared to be a warrior nation, a pair of exiles. it's only over time, and again I mentioned that for Marcus it was about trust, so it's only over time that the truth of their situation has been revealed. So let's look first of all at Sun Totem and go through his story a little bit. So Sun Totem was a part of a hunting party for the Warrior Nation, again looking to take on anyone that was going to threaten his settlement that he was part of. While out with his hunting party, which would include sort of his own cousins and family as well, he discovered when they returned that everybody in the settlement was different.
Acting strangely.
Yeah, they weren't themselves, and it took an evening to kind of work out why. And then they realised that what had happened was that while the party had been away for several days hunting, the entire settlement had been killed and replaced by mimics, by the cerulean, so from the Watchers. Why the Watchers had done this? Perhaps for observation. They're not clear. It's never been explained. But certainly all the settlement were dead and replaced. So
which would have included the rest of the members of his family that would have stayed behind.
Yes, which also included Flowing River, his sister. But we'll come to her in a moment. So returning to the settlement and seeing how they are, you see the mimics. So cerulean mimics have the ability, so in their natural form, they're kind of grey, goblinoid kind of creatures. But when they have the ability to shapeshift and take on the physical appearance, they're also telepathic, and they can copy the memories of the person that they're mimicking. When they, even if that person is then killed, they retain the memories and the appearance of that person until they choose to effectively cast them off, like you would take off a coat or something like that. Once that's done, though, then those memories and that appearance are lost. So all of the settlement looked like and had the memories of the original inhabitants, but there was little things over the evening that weren't quite there. So the memories were there, but
the behaviour, the mannerisms maybe
exactly.
weren't 100%.
It's the subtle details.
So the mimics hadn't had enough time to assimilate to their new identities, and that's what tipped off the hunting party.
Yeah, well, the settlement had fought back as well. So the mimics had killed everybody because there was no way that they could have kept them hidden away and secure. So the mimics were trying to do the best job that they could to impersonate, and possibly to a visitor, it would have been fine, but to actual family, to people that had also lived there, it didn't even last the evening before they were discovered. The hunting party then slaughtered everybody in the settlement, all of these mimics, all of the imposters. They killed them all. Sun Totem went to his own tent and found his sister, and he just knew that she was a mimic. So the original Flowing River was dead. However, the mimic this Flowing River, was really close to how his sister would have been, and Sun Totem realised that if he kills the mimic, he's essentially killing the last...
He'll be alone.
Yeah, the last trace of his family, and particularly his sister, who he was very, very close to. And he couldn't do it, which surprised both of them. It surprised Sun Totem, but it surprised the mimic as well. And the mimic felt this great outpouring of love and affection for him because, as I say, they've
had the memories, and
they have the memories and emotions and so on. So Sun Totem, when the rest of the war party then came towards the tent, Sun Totem actually protected his sister and killed the rest of the war party. Now, the rest of the war party obviously were surprised by Sun Totem's savagery, were caught unawares, and were all killed to a man. So appalled was Sun Totem though by what he had done, he swore two things. One, he swore he would protect his sister with his life, but also that he will never take another life if he can help it. And with those two things in mind, he's then embraced a life of medicine and healing and trying to save lives to make amends for what he had done. He isn't always successful, and occasionally he has killed people, much to his eternal regret, but wherever possible he tries not to, even to the point that, and you can see on the miniature, he's got like a tranquilizer gun and he's got tranquilizer darts on his arm. He will do everything he can to stun and incapacitate people rather than kill. So that's Sun Totem's story, and obviously as he's killed his tribespeople, he can't go back to the warrior nation. He has to then embrace the life of an exile, and then he's come to the Wayward Eight and joined them. He's brought with him his sister. Now, as we've established, though biologically she's now not his sister, she's a mimic, but the relationship is so strong and the feelings that the mimic has got are so strong that to all intents and purposes she is now his sister. He treats her, he thinks of her as his sister, and she thinks of herself as Flowing River now.
Even though outwardly, as we can see on the miniature, she is no longer recognisably 100% human.
Yeah, so that's something that's happened over the years now. It's been a couple of years that they've been with the Wayward Eight now. So what's happened was, so when the rest of the mimics were killed, so groups of mimics operate and they have a kind of a group synaptic connection, mental connection. When the rest of them were killed, normally that causes mimics to suffer what they call synaptic shock, and they would revert to their normal form. But because that happened pretty much at the same time that the strong emotions with Sun Totem were kind of all mixing around, Flowing River didn't revert to her natural mimic form, and in some ways it kind of shocked her into this outpouring of emotion and kind of a deeper connection to the psyche that she'd absorbed. So now she does live as Flowing River. She thinks of herself as Flowing River, but she is aware in the back of her mind that on a kind of a weekly, monthly basis, more and more of her original senses and thoughts are starting to kind of push back through this borrowed coat that she wears, and you can see that physically as well. So the mimic physiology is starting to reassert itself. Mimics are designed to go undercover and to duplicate or to mimic somebody and to maybe do that for several months, but they're not designed to do it for years. It's like clenching a muscle, tightly clenching a muscle for a long period of time. It's not designed for that. So what you'll have is that mentally she's trying to maintain her form, and with each passing month it's becoming harder and it's becoming more of a conscious effort to maintain the way she is. But she loves her brother, and she knows that if she does revert back to being a mimic again, River Flowing will be dead. You know, the memories will be gone, the physical will be gone, and she can never get them back. So she doesn't want to change. She doesn't want to embrace her true nature. She wants to stay with the dream, as it were, of being Flowing River. So she's fighting, and it's becoming a harder and harder fight each day to keep control, but she's trying to. And so what you're seeing is it's like if you clench your fist for too long, and so you've got that muscle tight, and after a while your hand starts to tremble. So that's what you're seeing with the alien physiology coming out. You're seeing that tremble coming through. She's got all of the skills and memories of Flowing River in terms of how she can handle herself. She can fight, but she's backing that up with her Watcher knowledge, with her alien skills and her access.
That sort of comes out as an innate understanding of Watcher tech if she ever comes across it.
Yeah, which is why she's managed to acquire a pair of clade axes, which are Watcher blade weapons, and she's deadly proficient with those. So she's an interesting mix. She's clearly not human. It's not clear that she's fully alien, but obviously there is something going on with her. And she goes from between a kind of a Native American girl in terms of how she speaks and her connection to her brother, but she's also, when she needs to protect her brother or protect the others in the Wayward Eight, she's deadly with those blades. So really interesting character and an important addition to the posse.
Well, that was the Wayward Eight, a new outlaw posse. We hope you found this sneak peek interesting, and we'll see you again soon.